how did the booming economy of Japan and its young population in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s turn into stagnation and older population? Right. So we know that Japan was once a major, very rapidly growing economy, booming economy. I think in the 1980s, I believe, if I am not mistaken, Japan had become the world's second largest economy, most likely, by the time the 1980s rolled into the picture. Japan underwent this massive rejuvenation of the nation after the disaster of the Second World War when it was nuked twice. The whole nation was destroyed. They rebounded rapidly. They went to work. They modernized very fast. Yes, I think in the 1960s, 70s, the economy was growing at 10% plus per year, 12% plus per year, very rapid growth. Yeah. So we know that Japan is controlled by the US. The Americans have more than 130 permanent military bases on Japanese soil. The Constitution of Japan has been written by the US in 1945. Not a single word has been changed. So the entire nation is essentially a vassal state, a puppet state of the US. Various Japanese politicians have revealed that no major decision can be done by the Japanese government without the express approval of the US military and the US government, and so on. So this nation is fully controlled by the US. It is not a free nation. It may have elections, it may have democracy, and the individuals may be free, but overall the nation is completely controlled by the US. Understand that. Now, so what happened? Japan was booming, the economy was booming, and suddenly something went wrong. So what happened is this: in the late 1970s, early 1980s, the Japanese bank, the Bank of Japan, the government had kept interest rates very low. What does that do? When interest rates are low, the people and the businesses can borrow money. It's good for borrowing. Let's say you want to expand your business. Let's say you want to do more R&D, research and development work. You will need money for that. You need capital for that. If you can borrow money at low interest rates, it's good. Let's say I want to borrow money and the bank is giving me a 10% interest rate, and I want to borrow, let's say, 100 rupees for 5 years. So after 5 years, I'm going to have to give them 150 rupees back because it's 10% interest per year. This is a very rough hypothetical example. But what if I'm getting the same money at 2% interest rate? Then instead of 150, I have to give them 110 after 5 years. So if the interest rates are low, it boosts the economy. It means there is more borrowing, there is more emphasis on research and development, and the economy grows. So during this time, when the interest rate was lowered, the Japanese economy grew rapidly. All the various Japanese technological firms like Sony and whatnot, they did very well. There was a lot of emphasis on research and development. That's why the Japanese nation became the most technologically advanced nation in the world, right? Now, in 1985, there was something called the Plaza Accords. This was between the US, France, Germany, UK, and Japan. 5 nations. One is the US, the other 4 are France, UK, Germany, and Japan. France is a reasonably independent nation, but Germany, the UK, and Japan are proper vassal states of the US. So these 5 nations decided to manipulate international exchange rates. It was all done at the behest of the Americans. So what the outcome was of this is that the US dollar depreciated in value, and the Japanese yen, the Japanese currency, the yen, appreciated in value. This was manipulation of international currency exchange rates. So when your currency becomes more valuable, more expensive, your exports decrease, your imports increase, because your population, which has money, suddenly the money has more value, so you can buy more. So imports increase, but your exports decrease. So that kind of flattens the economy. So because of the Plaza Accords, Japanese exports suddenly slowed down and imports started increasing. Then the exchange rates were further decreased. Yeah. So because of that, the real estate market in Japan started booming, and real estate property became very expensive, and people started buying property. There was this big real estate bubble. And then for whatever reason, the Bank of Japan increased the interest rates. What this did was, first of all, there was a stagnation of the economy. The people of Japan who had bought all this property, expensive property, suddenly found themselves saddled with property that is now lower in value. And now they, in the loans that they had taken, they had to pay more interest on them now, on the loans. Because of this, the entire consumer behavior changed in Japan, and the Japanese people stopped consuming. They stopped spending money, and the consumption went down. So there was deflation, there was stagnation of the economy, and over time this went on and on. And even today, the Japanese population, the Japanese economy has not recovered from there. The Japanese yen is now on very shaky ground. So this is not the entire story. I'm just giving you the very rough highlights. It is the actions of the Japanese government and the Bank of Japan that caused this entire thing to happen. They first kept the interest rates very low, yeah, and then there were the Plaza Accords orchestrated by the Americans, which manipulated the global exchange rates. It made the Japanese currency more valuable, it made it appreciate. Then there was the real estate bubble engineered by the Japanese bank, the Bank of Japan, and then they suddenly increased the interest rates, which totally destroyed the economy. So they called the 1990s the lost decade, the decade in which there was no growth in Japan. There was stagnation, almost no growth, 1% or 2% growth, less than 2% most likely. Yeah, maybe 1.2% growth. And yeah, so the economy shrunk, consumer behavior changed completely. The entire society became closed down, pessimistic. People stopped having children. Everything became more expensive, and you can see the results of that today. Japan has this rapidly aging population. The birth rates are way down. Yeah, way below for replacement, and the economy is not doing well. It's still stagnating. So it all originates in the actions of the Japanese government and the Bank of Japan, and all orchestrated by the Americans in the late 1970s, mid 1980s, late 1980s. That's where it all happened. And that's how the entire nation went from a vibrant, booming economy into an economy that is beset with deflation and stagnation. And that's where it is today. That's what happened.